On today's episode of Losses Above Replacement, we talk about Yoshinobu Yamamoto's massive deal with the Los Angeles Dodgers. It's the first ever LAR emergency podcast. Alex, hit the intro music.
It's time for the emergency podcast with Splash, Mac, and Alex. Yeah.
All right. On the
Thank you for
docket
that.
today is not Jesse Winker, with all due respect to the GOAT.
Mhm.
Fellas, where were you when Yamamoto signed a 12-year, $325 million deal with the new Evil Empire in Los Angeles?
I was playing a game of MLB The Show. I'm not gonna lie. I was just kind of trying to pass the time before going to bed because it was about a little past 11 p.m., being closer to 11:30 p.m. here on the East Coast. And then I saw that I started getting just random messages from people about like Jack Curry reported Dodgers are getting him, and then all of a sudden everyone was reporting it, and yeah, I had to break the news to my dad, and let's just say we weren't too thrilled about it. But yeah, that's where I was when Yoshinobu Yamamoto signed his contract or agreed to his contract.
Yeah, shout out to Papa Mac there. But I was playing Pokemon D&D because I am a nerd. But no, I saw the deal, and my first reaction was, oh, that happened. Second reaction was, I can't wait to talk about this on podcast because I was right, but we'll talk about that more later. But at the same time, I'm like, wow, think about this now for a second. For at least, it's like for 9 years, maybe a little bit less, depending on injuries and all that, you are now going to have a rotation in Los Angeles that the top of it is going to be Ohtani and Yamamoto together. That is World Baseball Classic level of good right there. Now they just need to add Roki Sasaki when he comes in into Major League
Please
Baseball,
no,
and you're
man.
just going to have the Japanese starting rotation.
They might as well
Like,
sign me in that case.
Hey, we can have a World Series champion on the board.
Exactly.
Yes. By the
Well,
way, odds
that
update.
implies they make it there.
This is true. Odds update. The Dodgers are plus 380 to win the World Series now on FanDuel, not sponsored. But of course, we know they will lose in the NLDS to the Rockies. And I was actually sleeping when the news broke, and I didn't see it until about 3 hours later when I checked my phone at work. I was just like scrolling through to see if I had like any notifications that I had to attend to, and I see, oh, Yamamoto to the Dodgers. Oh, great. So I thought about going in the freezer without a coat on and just sitting there and freezing to death. I did not end up doing that, but maybe I will think about that moving forward if the Dodgers win a lot. So one popular discussion point on the Bird app in the last 24 hours is, are the Dodgers ruining baseball? Mac, do you think the Dodgers are ruining baseball, have ruined baseball, will ruin baseball?
Okay, so here's my thing about this is that I was told by many wise users of the internet that when Steve Cohen signed Max Scherzer, he was ruining baseball. Or last offseason when he signed Justin Verlander and Kodai Senga, he was ruining baseball. But all of a sudden, the Dodgers have spent over $1 billion this offseason because of the Glass Now extension. All of a sudden, that means I've heard largely crickets about it. I mean, I understand though that there is a group of fans that think the Dodgers are ruining baseball. I'm not going to say that because I think that more teams should try to be aggressive like they are. That being said, I think it's kind of ridiculous that they are able to spend $1 billion and what do they have to pay? Like a dollar bill to their owner? Yeah, so I'm not going to say they're ruining baseball or they're going to ruin baseball, but I do think this feels a lot like, I know we've thrown this analogy a lot around a lot, and specifically with Dodgers, but it kind of feels like when the Warriors got Kevin Durant. You know what I mean?
yeah, I get that 100%.
Alex, have
Yeah.
the Dodgers broken baseball? Have they ruined baseball?
Broken baseball, potentially ruined baseball, no. I think that what's going on right now is the same kind of ideals as when the shift was made popular. It's finding loopholes within the game structure that either need to be addressed or played around. And right now, they're not breaking any rules. They're not doing anything that's honestly bad. Because here's the thing: is everything that they've been doing has downsides. We just don't see it yet. And to be fair, this is the exact same idea as tanking. Is doing bad in the short term will do good in the long run, whereas this is doing really good in the short term, but doing bad in the long term, right? Because right now, again, you're going to have a lot of deferred money after Ohtani's contract is done. And with this kind of contract as well, you're going to have a lot of cap later on that's going to be a lot harder to manage with Ohtani's deal, with Yamamoto's deal. Those 3 years, especially after Ohtani is done with the Dodgers, are going to be cap hell for the Dodgers. And you know what? At that point, they're willingly doing that. They basically signed that deal with the devil that says, all right, we're going to win right now. We're going to put every egg in our basket to win right now. But, and to be fair, there's some merit to that. There's some merit to basically saying, all right, we're gambling on ourselves. We're putting it all on right now. Chips are all in, ready to go. But there are downsides. There are times, like, we're going to be talking about this in a decade where everything is going to be like talking about how the Dodgers are just the bottom, potentially could be the bottom of the bottom. And that's the risk that you take with this. And if you don't win right now, this is going to look very, very stupid on the Dodgers thing. The one way how they've done it really well, though, is that they've at least made this window a lot larger. They've made this window pretty dang well sized for the next at least 5-6 years, which is cool. If you win multiple World Series championships in that time, then you've made out like a bandit. You're going to be absolutely fine. If you don't win, though, this is going to be basically like an old wives' tale. This is going to be basically a parable in trying to figure out how teams can and should match. But it's going to be that cautionary tale if they don't win it. It's going to be the tale of, oh, don't just put all your eggs in one basket, try to go more for the long run. This feels very much like an MLB The Show level of play here in a way. The reason why I say that, again, making the joke that we call them the MLB The Show of the real team of the real life. But right now, a lot of these feel like a lot of impulse moves, ones that definitely look good on paper, but there's a lot of repercussions later on that will eventually have to be addressed. It's just about, will it matter by the time it needs to be addressed?
So I'm going to offer you guys a question that you can think about while I give my spiel. How many World Series rings do the Dodgers need to have for these series of moves to be considered a success? So think about that. On the subject of them potentially breaking baseball or ruining baseball, there's really two options here. Option one is they don't actually win anything and nothing changes. Option two, they win a lot, and maybe that gets baseball to think, maybe we should have a salary cap, maybe we should have a salary floor, maybe we should have more competitive balance things, maybe we should reduce the amount of deferments, whatever that may be. So I think there are two ends of the spectrum here, that if the Dodgers win like 6 championships in a row, that would be unprecedented. But let's say they do that, then maybe you have some competitive balance things moving forward. But I do want to throw this out there, that even with Yamamoto and even with the effusive praise that has been heaped on Yamamoto and the effusive praise that has been heaped on Tyler Glasnow and Shohei Ohtani and whatnot, the Dodgers will not have Shohei Ohtani pitching this season, and they are still in the cluster, projections-wise at least, in the cluster with Philadelphia and Atlanta for best rotation in the National League, best rotation in baseball, and I don't think full projections are out quite yet for like lineups, at least the projections that I like using for this. They're not out yet, but I would imagine they're behind Atlanta and behind a couple other teams perhaps. So it's not a guarantee. You can be the favorite, and I think part of the Dodgers being the favorite to win the World Series, to win the National League, is because they don't have much competition in the NL West, with all due respect to the reigning and National League champion Arizona Diamondbacks, while the Braves have to deal with the Philadelphia Phillies. The Astros and Rangers will gobble each other up. add the Mariners into that as well. The AL East is going to be a bloodbath, etc. Well, the Dodgers get to win 110 games, probably without breaking a sweat, at least theoretically. So, fellas, how many World Series do the Dodgers need to win in the next 10 years for the Ohtani Yamamoto tenure to be a success?
So, okay, I'll speak up first.
Go ahead.
Here. I think that there's a couple different ways to go about it, and if I just need to give you a number right now, that number is 3. I think 3 World Series championships.
Like on the baseball side of things, we can discuss the influence of like getting new Japanese fans and money wise, they're going to be like they could win 0. They could go 1,620 the next 10 years, and they'd be rolling in cash.
Yeah. So yeah, my number for that is 3. But there's one thing I do want to bring in that is a bit of an influence to that, so we could talk about it more later, all that, but I want to bring this one bit up still, at least. And that is still that I think that number will be reduced by one person, and one person only, Dave Roberts. I think that Dave Roberts is not a good manager. He's had a lot of talent. He's had a ton of talent, and yet has won 1 World Series with that team. And that 1 World Series was in the COVID 2020 year. And at that point, when you have that influx of talent, when you have as good of players as he has had over the last like 5, 6, 7 years, and you have 1 World Series ring, there's a lot of problems. Like, he's a regular season champion, no doubt. When he is in the regular season, he is on the ball. He is one of the best. But when it matters most in the playoffs, he has shown time and time again he has not been able to get it done. We've had so many times, even just on this podcast since we started it, that we have talked about how the Dodgers are the juggernaut. The Dodgers are the team to beat. The Dodgers have done X, Y, and Z to make sure that they are the World Series champions. Remember how many times they've actually done it? Once. And it was in that 1 shortened season year that a lot of people don't recognize, which, to be fair, I recognize it fully. A World Series is a World Series. But at the same time, you've got to kind of look in the mirror and say, you know what? Regular series wins are good. World Series titles mean more. Like, to give kind of an example on it, right? The Seattle Mariners in 2001 won 116 regular games. Didn't even make the World Series. And I'm not saying that Lou Piniella was bad. I'm not saying any of the players on the team are bad, but it definitely loses the luster of that 116 when you realize that you didn't make the World Series. You barely made the American League Championship Series, and then you got flattened by the Yankees. Like, it's hard for me as a Mariners fan to say that, but that's why I'm being serious here. I think that, honestly, for them to win this World Series, for the Dodgers to be able to actually maximize on what they've got going here, they need to take a good hard look in the mirror and ask themselves, is Dave Roberts the guy to do it? If you take a look at regular season wins, yes, he's absolutely the guy. Take a look at postseason wins, and that question becomes a lot more murky.
That's the thing, though, with baseball especially, is that championships are not won on paper. You still have to play 162 games in the regular season to make it to the postseason. And, with the extra round and everything now, it's a lot tougher, in my opinion, to get to that World Series. So I think the number, I think I'm going with 3 also. It's just, the Dodgers have won the NL West since 2013, all but 1 year. But they only have 1 championship to show for it. Like Alex said, it was in the COVID season. And to me, that's like, it's the same to me as the Lakers ring in the NBA that year. It's like, all right, you got the ring, but the conditions were very different than normal. It was a shortened season. It was, for the World Series, it was like, what, 10% capacity in Texas? It was
very small.
Exactly. I know someone who was able to go to a playoff game that year because he was at TCU, and the playoffs, the LCS and World Series, were held in Arlington. So, I mean, I just think that well, from your perspective, Splash, since you're a Braves fan, like looking back at when the Braves won 15 straight, I believe 14 straight with an interruption in between because of the strike. They won 14 straight division titles, but they only had one ring. Do you like? I don't know how. At least from your perspective, does your fan base consider that like a run of success with only one ring? Because they were in the playoffs every single year, but they only won once. Like
They
it,
likely would have been in 94 as well.
well, the Expos were really good in
Yeah, they
'94.
would have
That's
been
the thing.
that was the first year of the wild card. The Braves would have
Yeah,
been in the playoffs. At least as the moment of stoppage, they would have been in the playoffs. See, this is the tough one. With the Braves entering that stretch, they had been horrendous. 80s were a very bad time to be a Braves fan. 70s were a very bad time to be a Braves fan. And they had just 2 World Series and none in Atlanta. So I think with Atlanta, I think that's a success. They have all the pennants up. You go to Truist Park, they have all the pennants up, and you have the one that's the off color to win the World Series, and then you have I forget if it's red or blue, but the ones when they won the NL pennant but didn't win the World Series, it's the opposite color from all the division titles.
hmm
So I think Braves fans consider that a period of like sustained success and greatness. And, you're going to pine for the big three and Chipper and Andrew to make the Hall of Fame and Bobby Cox, of course.
Bobby Cox.
Uh,
Yep.
I think the Dodgers, it's a little bit different in the construction of the team and I guess, the star orientation of the team, I guess. Because with the Braves, like Chipper was the number 1 overall pick. Andrew was a prospect. Glavine was a prospect. Smoltz was traded as a prospect. You get Maddox in free agency from Chicago, and that's your group. And on the other hand, you have the Dodgers. You have the Mookie trade, but he's already former MVP at that point. You sign Freeman as a former MVP. You sign Ohtani as a former MVP. You sign the richest contract in the history of the sport to a pitcher and the longest contract in the history of the sport given to a pitcher. So I think the Dodgers, and of course the Dodgers are a much more successful organization, like historically, than the Braves. What, 9 World Series, 8 World Series, 9 World Series. I know they haven't won a full length season World Series since '88. But I think, short story, I think Braves fans consider it a success. But when you throw around team of the '90s, like if I just went on Twitter and said the Braves were the team of the '90s, you're going to say, no, they lost a bunch of times. It's probably the Yankees. And that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
So
I mean, that's the thing
that's my take, I think, as a stand-in for Braves country.
So yeah, I agree with you though that this is different circumstances because the Dodgers payroll is absurd. And they've been, I mean, that's the thing though, is that it feels like every year they're considered the odds-on favorites to win the World Series, and they don't come through. So I think you need at least 3 rings out of this. I mean, honestly, the way they're going, they get 1, it'd be a big deal for them. I just think back to when the Yankees spent all that money before the 2009 season, and they actually won the World Series that year. They were the favorites before the season. They came through and they won the World Series. So I am not saying the Dodgers are going to win the World Series this year. They might be the betting favorites, but they also have plenty of question marks. Like, what's Walker Buehler going to be like this year? Is Clayton Kershaw going to be back this year at some point? What's Yamamoto going to be like in his first taste of major league action? They don't have Ohtani. So there are plenty of question marks around the Dodgers entering this year. But I think if you get a few rings in this next decade or so, then that would be a success. But I think you need more than 1.
Okay. I think my number's 2. And I will throw this out there. I posted this on our Twitter the other day at LAR_baseball. The last 6 years or so, you can expand this out a long time if you want to, but the last chunk of baseball, I would say, going back to 2018, the team that ends up winning the championship isn't always the best iteration of that team. So the 2018 Red Sox are the exception because that's the one like crazy year they had. outside of, or they had a bunch of random, like not
best
as
team
good
I've
years.
ever watched, in my opinion.
Exactly. So they're like a inner circle team ever. The 2019 Nationals probably get whacked by other Nationals iterations. The 2020 Dodgers probably get whacked by several different other Dodger iterations. The 2021 Braves probably get swept by the last two teams.
I was going to
Atlanta
say that, yes.
Yeah.
2022 Astros probably lose to the 2019 team, and the 2023 Rangers are in the first year of their potential run, so maybe that doesn't age well.
But I don't know if they would beat the 2011 or 2010 Rangers.
Yeah, I think at
2011
that point
Rangers, I mean,
you're going back a little far. But yeah, this is a case of baseball's an inherently, I don't want to say luck, but like you can go, it's a game of inches, to use the cliche from football, that all it takes is one inning to go wrong, one pitch to go wrong. We've seen that with Texas. They could have won the World Series in 2011. Sorry,
we've seen
Texas.
it with the Dodgers too.
Multiple times. The Dodgers, you have, like, think back to 2017. Any of those individual games in the World Series flips, the Dodgers win a ring there. In 2021, they could have been eliminated in the NLCS. The Braves had a 3-1 lead, and I hate saying that. Then the
You're
next
referring
year,
to 2020.
Yes, in 2020.
Right,
In 2021, well, if Tyler Matzik doesn't become prime Mariano Rivera and Mookie Betts is like not the worst playoff performer ever, then the Dodgers might come back and win that series because they would have had a game 7 at home. So it's just the Braves would have been game 7 at home. Sorry, but they would have had a game 7 and a chance to go back to the World Series. So it's just a matter of, I've said this as a Braves fan before. I said this when I was referring to the Orioles when I told them to pay their players. The goal here is to make a team that can win at least 54% of their games. Sorry, Alex. A little bit higher.
I'm going to hurt you.
Yes. Yes. The goal here, if you're making the playoffs every year and you have a shot in the tournament, you have at this point, a 1 in 12 shot. Even if you're the best team or the worst team, you have a shot. Unless you're the Marlins, but you have a shot here, and I think that's what matters. And I think the Dodgers are giving themselves the best chance to win over a long period of time. I think the Braves have done the same thing. I think the Phillies have done the same thing. I think the Yankees are stuck in kindergarten here. I think the Astros have done this have done this winning method. I think Texas, Seattle. I know Seattle hasn't like exactly done that yet, but I think Texas, Seattle have the makings of teams that will be 90 to 95 wins over an extended period of time. And you could win one World Series in that, absolutely. But it's really hard to beat the Giants and go to the playoffs, 4 times in your 8 years and win 3 World Series, right? And get Jacob deGrom in the other.
Every other year.
It's hard to win the World Series, folks.
It is. It's very hard to even get to the World Series.
It's hard to make the playoffs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Shout out to the 22-year drought. 21-year drought.
Unless you're in the NBA, then you're about 20%,
then you're chilling.
about 67%. Yeah.
One thing I do want to say though, real quick, to add on a little bit to your point as well, the other example that I thought of was in 2020, if the Rays don't take out Blake Snell, then the Rays potentially could have won the World Series right there too. But
or
another
2018, man, when Dave Roberts pulled Rich Hill and then Mitch Moreland immediately hit a pinch hit 3-run homer, like, dude, it's insane.
Exactly. But like that's one of the things. So the phrase that I was thinking of while you were saying all those things, Splash, is a phrase we use in football a lot, and that's any given Sunday. Any given Sunday, a team can win any game. You could have, you can have the Cleveland Browns beating prime Tom Brady. It's possible. And baseball.
Shout out Peyton Hillis, by the way.
Shout out to Peyton Hillis, Madden cover boy. But no, I think overall, right, that when you're looking at this team, they are doing everything they can to win right now. And I think that during this period, right, I think that most of the World Series championships are going to come in the first couple of years, or the first 5 years is where I could see them winning too. And I feel like that's drawn up for them because they have the backloaded deal from Yamamoto, because they have Ohtani only making $2 million a year. But at the same time here, I just kind of want to keep emphasizing the point that any team can win. We have seen it over and over and over again. And yes, there is an element of luck, but there's also a level of gamesmanship that is played so differently in the playoffs than it is during the regular season. During the playoffs, you get rid of that 5-man rotation. You're down to probably 3 with other people going in the bullpen. You're using pinch hitters a lot more often in the playoffs than you do in the regular season. It's like you play the game so differently, and maybe that's a little bit of why Dave Roberts has had his problems, as well as that during the regular season and postseason baseball, they might as well be close to 2 different sports because they are played so differently during this time. I don't think anyone can fully disagree with that part of it. The games are so different. The bright lights are so much different, and when every game matters that much more, like, don't get me wrong, every game matters during a regular season as well, but it's a 7-game series, not a 162 game series.
That's the thing is also, I mean, you mentioned the element of luck, sort of. This is the thing is also anyone can get hot or cold at the right or wrong time. I mean, this year the Dodgers had the runner-up and the third-place finisher in NL MVP voting, and they went a combined 1-for-21 against the Diamondbacks. And then again, you don't know when a David Freese is going to appear and knock off everyone possible. Like, that's the crazy thing is that Freese largely, I'm not saying he was a complete non-factor up until Game 6, but he hadn't lit the world on fire necessarily the first 5 games of that series, and then he became unstoppable. Same with Steve Pearce in 2018. Steve Pearce had, I'm pretty sure, 1 hit going into Game 4 of the World Series in 2018, and then he fired off a game-tying homer, then a 3-run double, then 2 more homers the next game. Like, you never know when that stuff is going to happen. I believe it was Yogi Berra who said, "I'd rather be lucky than good." Well, sometimes, yeah, you would rather be lucky than good. I mean,
yeah.
Think about the Marlins in 2003. I mean, what if Steve Bartman doesn't interfere with that ball? What if Alex Gonzalez doesn't boot a double play grounder on the next at bat? Like, there's so many things that could go your way or go against you. So it's 162 games is a marathon, not a sprint. But those 7 games or 5-game series are definitely a sprint.
Exactly.
All right. So before we wrap up, got 2 quick questions for you. I want a yes or no answer to the first one. Are the Dodgers the best team in baseball? Alex?
No.
Mac?
No, not this year at least.
I agree. Who would we go with?
That's a tough question.
That's honestly a really tough question. Honestly, my first inclination that I want to say is the Braves. But
yeah, I think I'd lean Atlanta, the lineup depth.
Yeah.
Bullpen.
For me, it's between the Braves and the Rangers.
Yeah. I still have my problems with the Rangers.
I think you can lump
pitching.
Houston into this conversation as well.
I don't know if I would put Houston in it.
I like their pitching a lot more than I do Texas's. At least unless they retain Montgomery, or if they sign Hader. Like, if they do something like that, then okay, we can change this. But I like Ryan Presley. You have Framber, you have JV. In theory, you have like Hunter Brown. Is it Hunter Brown? Yeah, Hunter Brown.
Yeah.
Javier, etc. Like, you can just go down the line. It's like, okay, in theory, you like that matchup.
Brian
of course, that didn't happen in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know.
I'll also
Atlanta and Houston. I would say the Dodgers are top 3, of course.
I mean, I will also just say that if we're talking about Astros and their pitching all that point, I would say Seattle has better pitching right now than the Astros do.
Really good. Yeah.
Yeah, their pitching
Seattle has a great rotation. We're not going to talk about the lineup.
Best in baseball.
We're not going to talk about the lineup.
No, we're not talking about the lineup just yet, Stanton.
No.
Also, I'm still mad at you with your little 54% comment there, Splash.
Yes,
so
yes.
we'll have to sell that one on the Dominion ground, I guess.
Yes.
So.
Okay. And final question: which team has the best ace duo, co-aces? So I posted this on Twitter earlier. The 4 that I chose to use here: Braves have Max Fried, Spencer Strider. The Dodgers have Yamamoto and Tyler Glasnow. The Mariners have George Kirby and Luis Castillo. Phillies have Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola. Right now, Wheeler and Nola are leading the voting by a decent amount. They have about 40%. Fried and Strider 23%. Seattle's duo 20%, and LA's duo 17%. Who would you guys take? You can go off the board here, or you can go with one of those four.
I really like the Phillies one personally, but I can't go against Seattle on this one. I will say though that just their overall starting five is better. Kirby and Castillo together are duo Cy Young, not award, like at least finalists.
Contenders.
Like, yeah, contenders. That's a better word. Thank you, contenders. Both of them together, like we saw Kirby, like there was a period of time where we're thinking, okay, is Kirby going to be good this coming year for 2023? Because it was going to be the sophomore year. You have the sophomore slump.
He was my Cy Young pick.
He was your Cy Young pick. He was a dark horse pick for me. And he came through. He played incredibly this year and was a contender for the Cy Young. He got votes. He got some votes in there too, which I find hilarious. And then you have Luis Castillo, who is stupidly good and has been stupidly good. His down, like to kind of borrow a quote that you use, Splash here, when it comes to Juan Soto, his down year this year, a lot of people thought this was his down year, was still better than a lot of people's best years. He is an extremely good pitcher. La Piedra is well firm to be that number one guy, but Kirby is right on him.
Yeah,
Matt,
so
who would
I'll
you say is the best duo?
So the tough thing here is that ceiling wise, it would be the Dodgers without doubt. But so many question marks there. Is Tyler Glasnow going to pitch more than 120 innings? Is he going to qualify for the ERA title? Yamamoto has yet to throw a pitch in the majors. So if we were going ceiling and just on paper, the Dodgers, but sticking to the current day, I think I'm leaning Seattle here. I'm a huge fan of George Kirby, and Luis Castillo has been doing this for so long. I feel like it's crazy because he's still like relatively young, but he's been around since 2017. But I think I lean Seattle here, barely over the Dodgers, and then it's tough because the Phillies and Braves both have good duos in my opinion. But I think I'm going Seattle.
I think I'm going to lean Atlanta. I think Strider, out of the 8, is probably the best pitcher, with Wheeler being number 2 there. And I would take Fried over Nola. And I think Fried had a weird year last year. He got hurt for once. He was a second in Cy Young in 2022. It was excellent in 2021. Helped win the World Series, of course. I think I'd lean with Atlanta's 1, probably Phillies 2. You know, you've been there, done that in the playoffs. I know Nola's numbers aren't amazing. The ERA is a little bit inflated with the ballpark. Kirby Castillo, that's just a solid high floor for me. I don't know if I think Strider's a top 5 guy. I think Wheeler's a top 5 guy. I don't think Kirby and Castillo are top 5 guys. And the Dodgers, I think you have 2 top 5 upside guys, but we haven't seen either of them put it together for a full season. So I would lean Atlanta. So any last words before we wrap up?
I agree on that assumption there, but I respect it still. So
yeah. My final words I will say is that, and it terrifies me, but the Dodgers might not be done spending. Reminder that Josh Hader is still a free agent. The Dodgers need arms. Jordan Montgomery is still a free agent.
Oh, no.
So is Shota
not Monty.
Imanaga.
Although if they get Monty, then they're probably not getting Fried next year.
Oh, I would not put it past them.
I know.
So
Max Fried's going to be a Dodger next year, and that's going to hurt.
Beware of the Dodgers.
That's going to hurt.
That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Alex, any last words?
So to bring us back to Yamamoto for a second, I think that Yamamoto is going to have an amazing year. And to be fair, I also still fully think he's going to probably be Rookie of the Year this year.
In all likelihood.
Yeah, he's so dang good. The fact that they had to rename his curveball for him, being the yo-yo curve, I think that's beautiful. I've watched him throw bullpens, and that splitter curveball combination with his fastball is going to be very, very tough for major league pitching hitters to hit. So I think right now Yamamoto is going to definitely make an immediate impact. And I am very scared for 2025 when we're going to see at the top of that Dodgers rotation, you're going to see Ohtani, Yamamoto, and Glasnow in any one of that order.
This is absolutely fair. All right, well, that'll wrap us up for the inaugural emergency pod of the Losses Above Replacement podcast. Make sure you check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Drop a 5-star review, leave a comment, drop some questions perhaps. You can follow us on Twitter at LAR_baseball. You can follow Alex at SportsGuy242. You can follow Mac at Mathias_A_K. You can follow me at Mr. Splashman19. And remember, folks, Fernando Tatis Jr. will win the 2024 NL MVP.
No.
Peace.